The stocks fell on Friday and extended Thursday's losses. The loss ended a volatile week in the red as investors digested the Federal Reserve's signal for rate hikes next year. The Fed delivered a strong indication that the central bank could hike interest rates 3 times next year. Currently, the market-implied odds are that a liftoff for higher interest rates will come in May of 2022. The message seems to weigh heavily on longer duration technology and growth stocks that are valued heavily on future earnings potential. The Nasdaq Composite, which is home to many growth stocks, underperformed on Thursday, giving back all of its gains after a rally on Wednesday. The index has fallen 5% over the past month through Thursday's close. On the other hand, cyclical stocks in the energy and financial sectors outperformed on Thursday, with the prospects of a higher interest rate seen as benefiting these sectors. The market seems to be in the beginning of a transition. Before, most anything you bought would go up in value. Now it's a very different environment when you're going to have to pick and choose more carefully. As a segue, the ambassador has asked me to add more detailed commentary about buy and sell points or signals, and I'll happily do this. So, let's take a look at the charts. Today we're going to take a look at one chart, which is the 6-month daily chart. On this biter is the SPY, and as you can see, Friday's close was 459.87. Now, it's not happening exactly as we expected, at least the price move, but I think there is some rhyme or reason to what's going on here. Certainly in the last couple of days, the market's reacting to the news from the Fed. I had hoped that the market would come back down here and test this 450 level as it did back here. I think that would be a lot healthier for the market because this downward move and then upward move was just a little too quick. I actually like to see markets evolve in this sort of manner here, where it takes its time before it gains its steam and enough strength to head on up. So hopefully this market comes back down here, maybe not all the way to the 450 level, but I'd like to see a little bit of a sell-off into next week and then gather enough steam and strength to head on up. Let's go take a look at the oscillators. Volume is basically telling us that there's a sell-off, and that's not unexpected. Here, into the MAC, and this is where I'll talk a little bit about those buy and sell signals that the ambassador wanted me to. It's difficult when the fast line and the slow line are moving together, and when they move together like this above that zero line, then the market tends to head on up. So you won't want to be trading a lot of sells and buys during this kind of formation. At least I don't. And again, as you've heard before, for me, the MAC is my main signal. So on the bottom side, when the fast line bottoms bases and starts to head up and then moves through the slow line, that is my signal to buy. When it's heading on down through the slow line here, that's my sell signal. Now this is just the daily chart, and as you know, I like to use the monthly and the weekly chart, but it depends upon what I'm doing. For the most part, I like to invest for the long term, so I do use the monthly and the weekly chart. The daily I just look at just to follow what's happening with the stock. If you want to do some more quick day trading or swing trading, a lot of investors like to use the daily. But for me, the MAC is the main oscillator that I use. But you can pick any oscillator that you want, just however you feel most comfortable with. Again, because I'm long term, I like to use the monthly, then the weekly, and then to move to the daily just for some precise picks on the upside and on the downside. But right now we can see that it topped out here. The fast line topped out, came through the slow line down here, and then this move from this level here to up here, I thought was going to be a little bit too far for it to move. It did continue on up and through the slow line. I expected a reflection before that, but we're getting at least some downside here, not necessarily a reflection, but some downside, and due most to the Fed statements earlier this week. I expect this fast line to continue on down here toward the zero line. It might not come all the way, and if it goes further, that's not bad either. But I expect it to head into this direction, and we'll see if it comes down here, bottoms and bases, and then heads back up. And if it heads back up and through that slow line, then that would be a buy signal, at least for me, if that's what I was looking for. Now, into the histogram, pretty much tells the same story. There in the price rate of change, also somewhat of the same story. Nice bottoming and basing here. And if you're looking for a buy signal from the price rate of change, it would be in this area here, and certainly by the time it moved on up to this point here. And this would be a possibility of another buy signal if you want to look for a later signal. Down here, bottom and basing, this is the maximum negativity, but as we know, it might continue down, the price might continue down. But as you can see, the price rate of change, this oscillator continues to head on up. So another buy or sell signal is if the oscillator moves through, say, the zero line or the midline. And let's take a look at the relative strength index. This has a midline. So you might use that midline as a sell signal. It just depends upon what fits your style. Now we're moving on down here with the RSI. Similar to this here, this bottoming and basing, maximum negativity by that, and then this move here wasn't as far down. I don't expect this move to come as far down as this point here. It's possible, but I don't think that's what the probability is, so be watching that. And then here into the stochastics, this is another nice buy and sell signal. It gives nice basing and bottoms as well as some tops. You can see that the time to sell perhaps was either right here or perhaps right here. And you just got to figure out if you kind of want to jump the gun or if you want to be late. Oftentimes it's best to be late. And here, this bottoming and basing, you can use the stochastics along with the other oscillators and then pick and choose from that too. And of course, a nice buy point would have been right here. You could have bought back here, but you'd have to wait because the market came back down here and then you headed on up. But these buy signals down here, that's a nice way to do it because you're protected on the downside, at least some. Not always, as we've learned. So, moving on down here into the Williams, it looks pretty similar to the stochastics. This doesn't necessarily give good buy and sell signals because it tends to hang, say, above this negative 20 line for quite a while, but it can also hang below that negative 80 line for quite some time. So it doesn't necessarily give really good signals, with the exception that sometimes it'll hit a bottom like this and then it'll scream higher. And when it does that, or when it really heads on down, then you know something's up. So you got to pay attention. And of course, you always have to pay attention to the price chart as well. Once you study all of these oscillators, and for me it's the MAC, but once you study these in depth over a long period of time and taking a look at the monthly, the weekly, and the daily, you'll get a much better feel for what happens in the market as well as with the oscillators. And you'll also notice that there's a tendency for the price to hang up in these EMAs or SMAs, depending upon what you're using. Oftentimes, other investors are looking at these moving averages and they use those as their buy and sell signals. So you'll see some consolidation of the pricing once it gets to these price levels shown by the EMA or SMAs. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use all of these charts and oscillators for a buy and sell signal. It's just you pick what's comfortable to you. But for me, it looks like the market is heading on down, maybe a little bit further, and then some bottoming and basing, and then perhaps we can head on up, say later next week into the following week. So pick and choose your points, but as usual, study the fundamentals as well. And for today, that's ChewDog Charts. Thank you.